Hey guys, welcome back to Mo's Game Table. Today we're going to take a look inside The Fate of All, Strategicon Book 1, Alexander's Campaign Against the Persian Empire, the First Diadochi War, and Other Deeds. This is a game designed by Fabrizio Vianello and is published by Thin Red Line Games. Well, everybody knows Thin Red Line Games for their hypothetical World War III series they got with 1985 and the C3 series. But now they're stepping into Ancients here with this first in a series of games, and we start with The Fate of All. Recently, we had both Fabrizio and Tony from Thin Red Line Games on Whiskey Charlie, and they were telling us all about this game. And it really does sound like a very compelling game to check out, whether you're into Ancients or not, because this game is both operational and tactical and dives into the problems around logistics at this time, about your army organization, supply, morale, your commanders. All of those things are big pieces to this game. There is no back of the box, so we're just going to dive right in and take a look at all the components you get inside this game. All right, we get our 2d10, some baggies, the fate cards, our rule book, scenarios and designer's notes, the Strategicon, whole bunch of player aids, including the booklets like we've seen in the C3 games and the 1985 series. Got our counter sheets and all of our maps. So let's set up the maps and take a closer look at the game. And we'll take a look at the maps that come with the game. There are 4 separate maps, A through D, and then there's a 5th map, which is the battle map. We'll take a look at that last. I'm not going to lay them all out side by side and create the entire campaign map because I just don't have the focal length on the camera to fit it all in. It's going to take up this entire table, I can tell you that, and probably hang off some, so I may have to use a different table to play this game because these maps are going to be big all together. But beautifully done maps, as we've come to expect from Thin Red Line Games, and we've got that nice coating and just really dig the color palette and the art used on this map. Everything is very easy to understand. You have your mountains, you've got your open areas, you've got flood areas, you've got woods, you've got cities, all different types of cities, A through D. There are different sizes and they're easy to tell based on the graphics on the map. You also have ports and naval bases. A port would be this white anchor here. You may not be able to see it. Maybe here you'd be able to see this one. This is the white anchor, and this is going to be just your regular port. Next to that, we have the orange anchor. That's going to be your naval base. Up here, we've got a ferry, this double-sided blue arrow. You've got Royal Road here. Obviously, aside from the mountains and all your different open areas, you've got forests, flood areas, some desert, rivers, major rivers, lakes. And of course, we have the sea and coastal areas, which are, you can tell by the different tones of blue. Light blue is coastal, and the deeper blue are the open sea. These dotted areas here that you'll see sprinkled around the map, those are your supply areas. There are also choke points, like we have here next to Delphi, and you'll see numbers that are sprinkled around the map. That's going to be the supply value, because remember, taking care of your troops is going to be a big portion of this game. This is Map A. Then we have Map B, again, more mountains, but a lot more plains here in this area, along with a few lakes up the top right, and one over on the far left. Then we have Map C, where we have a lot of open sea, as well as the different plains and desert areas. And finally, we have Map D, which is going to complete the overall campaign map, A, B, C, and D. Not every scenario in this is going to have the use of 4 maps. The only time you use the 4 maps is for the campaign. For the scenarios, you're either going to be using 1 or 2 maps. So you don't need a gigantic size table to be able to fit this game in if you want to play it, except when you're going to be playing the campaign game, then you're going to need a lot of space. But overall, really beautiful maps, and when you put them all together, it's going to look really great on the table. And then the last map in the box is the battle map, and this is if you're going to take things to the tactical level. You can play at the operational level and resolve your battles that way, or you can take it down where you actually fight at the tactical level, which, in my opinion, would be the preferred way to go. You have a very simple map side A and side B. You're going to choose your side and go from there. You have a river through the middle, and as you can see, you've got mega hexes. All of these will come into play based on who the attacker is, who the defender is, where you're going to set up, and then where you are on the operational map as far as what the terrain types are and what you can use in this map here. So all those things are going to carry over to the tactical map when you do your setup. Just like the other 4 maps, you have that nice coating on them. So another fantastic job by Thin Red Line Games. Next, we'll take a look at the player aids that come with the game. We start off with the turn track. You have your calendar at the top, giving us all the years, and then the months below that as well. Then we have satrapies alignment, and then the movement points track. Then we have the Macedonian player mat, armies 1 through 4, fleets 1 through 4, and then at the bottom we have tracks for the Macedonian morale and treasury. Next, we have the same for the Persian forces. And lastly, we have the planning map, which also gives you an overall look at what all 4 maps together are going to look like on the table. As you can see, it's going to be quite an impressive sight. Next, we'll take a look at the charts and tables booklet. Just as with other Thin Red Line games, we have the booklet that's going to have all your charts and tables in it. So you just flip page to page to make it easier. You don't have to worry about losing any of your charts and tables on individual player aids. Flip it open. On the inside of the front cover, we have the movement table and the movement cost, terrain legend, force march table and modifiers, and the reconnaissance table along with the results and reconnaissance level and the reaction table below that. On the next page, we have the surrender table, siege table, assault table, and the sacking table along with their modifiers and results. And then we have the cities information at the bottom right. On the next page, we have foraging table and results, as well as the modifiers for foraging, sea shipping table, the results, plunder table, and the requisitions table, attrition table, and attrition modifiers and results on the right-hand side. On the next page, we have faction morale modifiers, donation table, bribery table, and the revolt table along with their modifiers. On the next page, we have the land combat table, modifiers and results on the left-hand side. Next to that, we have the retreat losses table, modifiers, and the retreat losses results, as well as the commanders table below that. Then we have retreat during combat, route table, pursuit table, and the naval combat table along with its modifiers below that. Next page, we have battle movement table, movement points table, line order modifiers and rally table, missile combat table and modifiers, as well as the missile combat results and the missile type of ammo. On the right-hand side, we have melee combat table, modifiers, and the melee results. On the back of the charts and tables booklet, we have the unit legend giving you a breakdown of every aspect of each encounters, unit types, force cost table, shipyards table, and then the recruitment areas table. Next, we'll take a look at a few examples of the fate cards that come with the game. Now, fate is one of the aspects that you'll be dealing with as well. These are things that are going to affect either side. Gold is my side. A well-paid informer reports to the Greeks the exact strength of the Persian army. The Macedonian faction may examine one Persian stack at the force box of one army in it. The Minotaur awakens. An envoy of the Spartan king persuades the Cretan warring factions to stop fighting and support future actions against Macedonia. Playable only if the Spartan revolt has not yet happened. The alignment of Crete is moved 2 spaces in favor of the Persian faction. An insolent remark. After too many drinks and an insulting remark, Alexandros loses control and kills one of his companions. It's playable only if Alexandros is still alive. After this, you have 2 steps. A randomly picked Macedonian leader in the same hex of Alexandros is immediately removed. And number 2, the Macedonian morale is decreased by 2. A blessed month. Demeter particularly appreciates a recent sacrifice of bulls and blesses a region with an exceptionally bountiful harvest. Playable only from May to October. The 2 factions alternate at choosing a province not already selected and rolling a die. On the first die roll of 10, apply the following. Each supply region in the province has its depletion level decreased by 2. And number 2 is plundering a city in the province gives double the normal supply points. So as you can see, there are varying things that will affect both factions in the game, and there are 20 cards in the deck. Next, we'll take a look at the counter sheets that come with the game. These are 5/8 inch counters. Very legible, easy to read, and beautiful art on these counters. We start off with Macedonian units on the left, Thracian. Below that, we have Thessalia. And at the bottom right, we have Greek units. On the next sheet, we have the remainder of the Grecian units, and below that we have Boeotian units. Then we have administrative counters for the remainder of the counter sheet. On the next sheet, we have a wide mix of units: Media, Persian, Anatolian, Mesopotamia, and then at the bottom we have Aegean. On the next sheet, we have Spartan units, mercenaries, Thracian rebels, and then we have some fleet counters for the different factions, as well as different administrative counters for use in the game. Then we finish out on the last sheet with the remainder of the administrative counters. Next, we'll take a look at the rules. This is a 23-page full-color rulebook. Inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all the different rules and their associated page numbers. Then we get to the introduction, game equipment, general rules, definition of terms, sequence of play, and then your leaders, faction leaders. This gives you a breakdown up here just real quick on the leaders. The two numbers on either side of the leader give you their strategic rating on top, tactical rating on the bottom, and then the number right next to that is the command range. Then we have the land units, and the breakdown of land units is as follows. Number on the left-hand side is the combat value. Next to that, I'll tell you the type, like in this example, PH for phalanx. Bottom left number is the melee value. Next to that is the morale value, and then these size points on the right-hand side. For missile units, you can have your missile value next to that after you get to your morale. Then we have the missile type, and then the long range. At the bottom, we have naval units. Combat value on the left-hand side, size points on the right, and then the origin at the top right. And the size points are for your stacking, because you'll see here the stacking limit is measured in size points based on the city size. So like your largest city is going to be an A, the capacity there is going to be 50, the smallest is going to be D, the size there is 10. For a fortress, you have 20, so fortress is going to be in between C and D. It's going to be a step up from D, just below C. So that tells you how many units you can stack in each of these locations. Then we get to movement, moving units, movement costs, force boxes, movement restrictions, effects of enemy units, overrun, lone leaders, combine, the royal road, floods, hazardous terrain, the ferry, forced march, Diolkos, winter, naval transport, transporting your troops, reaction move, effects of the reaction marker, reconnaissance, and then we get to land combat on page 7. Your land combat procedure all spelled out for you. Attacking and defending armies, battle commander, route level, combat modifiers, combat results, leader casualties, the king must survive, which is an optional rule, choke points, land retreats, retreat before combat, retreat during combat, army routes, retreat movement, retreat losses, and pursuit. Then we have naval combat procedures, all the steps there for attacking, defending, naval commanders, retreats, breaking contact, disruption, cities and ports, intrinsic defense values based on the different city sizes, largest being A, that intrinsic defense is 35, the D is the smallest at 5, and then fortress is between B and A at 15. Then we have blockade, surrender, assault, siege, besieging cities, siege trains, siege resolution, fate of the defenders, sacking, supply check procedures, foraging procedures, scorched earth, depletion, requisitions, plunder, shipping routes, creating new shipping routes, reorganizing, baggage trains, using your baggage trains. Then you have depots, using a depot, embarked units, attrition, land attrition, naval attrition, as well as your attrition procedure. Then we have provinces, province control, independent provinces, and then bribery. The treasury, taxation, fielding the army, force pool, your maintenance, raising new forces, disbanding your forces. Then we have morale, donations and fate. And then we get to tactical combat on page 17. It says here, the scale and rules have been tailored to allow a realistic but not overwhelming representation of an ancient battle, and to keep the time needed to determine the outcome within a reasonable limit. Then we have the sequence of play, deploy for battle, the river, major river, rough and forest. Remember, that's what you're going to be using this map here that's below this. This is the battle map. You'll be using that for the tactical combat. Stacking, stack organization, leaders in battle, activation sequence, opportunity activation, command range, leader movement, unescorted leaders, orders, unit orders, stack orders, line orders, whole bunch of orders there. And then we have movement. Got an example of moved and not moved, facing, missile combat, reaction missile combat, range missile combat, volley resolution, missile ammo, leader casualties, missile replenishment, engagement sequence, the pullback sequence, charging, engagement effects, melee combat. Then we have disengagement step, the sequence of your disengagement, clash, melee, heroic leadership, which is optional. Then we have melee combat modifiers, weight and facing, attrition charge leaders, breakdown steps, close ranks, attrition, reorganization, disruption, unit route, fleeing, routing, unit route movement, route effects. Then we get 2 special units, elephants. This is one of the coolest things, in my opinion, is step 3. An elephant unit that must flee or route goes on a rampage instead. So that's definitely not going to be fun. And then below that is the rampage procedures. You got chariots, pass through, and then ending the battle, army rout, army retreat, and the battle losses. And then we are at the back of the rule book. Next, we have the scenarios and designer's notes. This is a 19-page full color book. On the first page, we have the table of contents listing out all of the different scenarios, campaigns, additional rules, and their associated page numbers. Start off here with the additional rules. This is Sparta, Spartan Revolt, Spartan Surrender, Thracian Revolt, Thracian Surrender, Crete, Hegemony, the Conqueror's Favor, the Great King, by Ahura Mazda, Persian Court, and then we have Subject Kingdoms, Garrisons and Revolt. And then we get to Elite Units and Persepolis. Below that, we start off with Campaign 1, and this is going to be the only one where you're going to be using all 4 maps. It's going to be your campaign, the Anger of Achilles. It's going to give you a breakdown of your setups for your different factions, your Persian setup, Macedonian setup, and then you're going to have your leaders, your assets, scenario rules, who has initial control of what areas, province alignments, fake cards, and then Persian succession. Followed by Macedonian succession, off-map satrapies, it never ends, and then the additional rules and victory conditions. Then we get to scenario 1, 10,000 again. This is only going to be using map A, so this is one of the 1-map scenarios. Then we have scenario 2, Arise Hellas. That's also going to be only map A, so again, only 1 map. Scenario 3, the Shattered Bonds, that's going to be map A and B. And then scenario 4, it all comes to this, is going to be map B and D. Then we have the designer's notes on page 15 by Fabrizio Vianello. It's going to give you a breakdown of all the different units and how we represented them in the game the way he did, as well as the campaign. Then we get into the classical period sources and the modern sources if you'd like to read further about the different aspects of the game. And that's one of the things that he brought up and talked about during the Whiskey Charlie show, as did Kev. And that's what made me get this book here, Alexander the Great and the Logistics of the Macedonian Army. I thought that would be pretty interesting to read. It's a short book, and it's very interesting so far from what I've read. And then we are at the back of the scenario book. And lastly, we have the Strategicon. This is an 8-page full-color book. Inside of the front cover, we have the table of contents listing out all the different sections, as well as their page numbers. This is going to be kind of an examples of play book, but it's going to be giving you different situations and how they are played out in the game. The march, prelude, the shipping route, simple plan, one big army, supplying the army, first supply check, second supply check, the final supply check, preparation, the conclusions, and then we have the smart plan, 3 columns. The move supply checks, final supply check, and then the conclusion, the reaction, giving you all the different steps as well as images to add to the illustrated examples. Land combat, approach the battle, retreat before combat, reveal the armies, point commanders, click check for overrun, determine the route value, retreat during combat. So it begins combat round 1, combat round 2, and combat round 3. Then we have more combat rounds and retreat during combat. Then we have the art of the siege. That carries over to the final page where we've got the opening moves, asking for surrender, and then the assault and starting your siege, the fate of the defenders at the end. And that is a look at everything you get inside of The Fate of All. This is a game designed by Fabrizio Vianello and is published by Thin Red Line Games. Well, we know already now what Thin Red Line Games is all about. They make some really compelling and deep games, and the component quality on their games is fantastic. This is no exception. Beautifully done maps. Counters look really fantastic. I love the art on them. All the information is easy to read. The only component out of the game that I had a little bit of difficulty with, and you may have noticed when you looked at it too, were the fate cards, because I love the art on the cards, but with the text, they kind of blended a little too much into the card. It seemed, at least to me, like it was a little hard to read. You had to put a little more effort than maybe you should have for the cards. But they're a big part of the game, but they're not like you're going to be using them every single play of the game. You're going to be using them one time in a turn, so it's not that big of a deal. But that is one of the things that possibly they could improve on in the future with that text. Maybe get that text to contrast a little bit more with the image in the back. But again, the art on those cards is fantastic, as is all the art in the game. I really love these maps. Love the fact that they coat them, and you have these beautiful counters, like I said. Everything is just fantastic. The rules don't look to be too difficult to pick up at all. They're laid out in a nice logical fashion. Then you have the Strategicon, which will walk you through understanding all the different steps. Then you have the scenarios. 4 individual scenarios and then the 1 campaign. Again, these are big maps, big beautiful maps. You're only going to need it one time for the campaign game. For the scenarios, you're going to either be using a 1 or 2 maps. So you can save the big campaign for when you go to a convention if you don't have a big table at home, or when you get to your game store, you can put it up on the tables there. But at home, you'll be able to put out 1 map or 2 maps, depending on what you're going to be using, along with the battle map when you play the tactical version of the combat instead of just the operational. But you have 2 options, which is fantastic. And it's a nice deep dive into a really fascinating era in history. So I'm looking forward to checking it out, because I don't know that much about this period of history. I mean, I like it when it comes to the movies and stuff like that, but I've never really delved that deeply into it. I think that's one of the greatest things about war games, is it puts you into that era and you experience it through the game, and that will then make you want to go watch documentaries, read books, learn more about the era. And I think that's what this game is going to do for me. So go ahead, there are still a couple of copies left. These games go out really fast for Thin Red Line Games, so if you don't jump on them right away, you're going to be left by the wayside and having to get one in the aftermarket. So jump over there to their website and see if you can get the last couple of copies that are available right now. Well, I hope that helps you guys out if you'd be curious about this one. If you have any comments or questions, post them down below. Thanks for tuning in, guys. See you next time.